Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan here on Drum Talk TV. Can't believe we're leaning toward the back end of April 2026. That's just nuts. Somewhat bothersome, actually. But hey, hope you're all doing well. We have an interesting topic today. Feel free to chime in, and I'm pleased and thrilled to welcome a guest VJ, Mark Zutkoff, coming to us all the way from Plano, Texas. And I'm in Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix, up in the mountains as usual. And we're going to talk about a fun topic. You don't even have to be a musician. Any kind of music fan can appreciate this topic, I believe. Music genres and how they've really split. First of all, welcome, Mark. And by the way, Mark's here because you won one of our music trivia game shows. And as we're going live today on the 22nd, there's one tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and the trivia is live album. So, Mark, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, exciting to do this. So the reason why, and you came up with this topic, thank you very much. And the reason out of the few that you threw our way, I said, oh, we got to do this one, is because I love telling the story I'm going to tell because it kind of sparks this whole topic in a way. When I was a little boy and started playing drums, I was like maybe a few months before I turned 7. So this is 1969. And I would put on headphones and just play to whatever came on the radio. And back then, the big station in LA was 93 KHJ, and music was not segregated then anywhere near the way it's segregated now. So I learned to play drums. I took lessons, but I learned playing the music that I didn't realize in a lot of ways was different genres of music. So for instance, on this station, there would be a Led Zeppelin song, then a Neil Diamond song, then a Barbra Streisand song, then a Steppenwolf song, and then an ELP song. Like, it was all bunched together in one bucket. And it wasn't until we started to move into the very, very early 70s, like maybe 1970 and 8/12, when music really started to blossom in some other ways. And I also think I'm guessing for monetary reasons, I would guess that maybe they started segregating stuff so that they thought, well, if we own 5 stations and these play soul and R&B and these play hard rock and these play goth, that we'd be able to get more advertisers. And so I don't know if that's how it happened, but do you remember that wherever you were living at the time? Were you living at the time in the late 60s?
Yes, I'm a little bit older than you, sir.
Okay.
But I do remember that. And while I am aware of 93 KHJ, I've heard air checks from it. My dream was to go into radio. And in fact, I did that for a while.
Oh.
That was a brief time after I graduated from college. I worked at an all-news station in Trenton, New Jersey. And then that ended and took about 8 months before I found another radio job. I wound up in Kansas and worked at a radio station in Hiawatha, which was in the Northeast, Garden City, which was in the Southwest, and Hoisington, which is smack dab in the middle, 10 miles north of Great Bend. The two in Hiawatha and Garden City were country stations. Garden City also had an FM station that broadcast album rock at night. And then Hoisington was a top 40 station.
Isn't
then
that
I went back. Sorry,
album
go ahead.
rock? Isn't that interesting? Album rock at night, because it had to be put somewhere like this is different. So we're going to have a special slot for it. Whereas it became so mainstream, and maybe to some degree it still is.
Well, it was also that the station simulcast the AM and the FM during the day. So the AM went off at sundown. The FM continued until about 11 o'clock at night.
Interesting.
And they went to album rock. And at one point, I started there as a production director doing commercials and promotions. Then I became the music director when the music director left. Then I became the program director when the program director left. And they never backfilled these positions. It was all me for a while. And I even programmed the album rock portion. I tried a format that I called predominant sound, where I wanted to try to get it away from just guitar, guitar, guitar. And so I tried to segregate the music library by predominant sound, keyboard or drum or
Horns,
vocal
maybe.
or horns. Yeah. This was not looked fondly upon.
Oh,
So
really?
it didn't last very long. And in fact, I didn't last much longer at that station. I
But I
wound
bet
up
people
going to
discovered
one
a
in
lot of
Boise.
music that they weren't familiar with because of that. Like
Well, they could have, except that the DJs at night weren't keen on doing it, and they resisted at all times.
status quo. Yeah. So
Yeah.
was the
But
music kind of how I described in your area on the radio, where a lot of it was mushed together until you started doing that?
well, originally I'm from Baltimore, Maryland.
Oh,
Actually, Baltimore County. Timonium is the place.
okay.
And I originally listened to a lot of middle of the road radio and classical because my parents both loved classical music.
Hmm.
Then in 1969, I got my first good FM radio, was trying to tune in the local classical station and hit the local top 40 station. And my eyes or ears were opened.
Nice.
So fell
So
in love with that.
what was considered real hot back then, Mark, as top 40? Because sometimes, depending on how old someone is, what music or decade they grew up in, top 40 might mean the Osmonds or it might mean Led Zeppelin. What was it to you back then in that day?
Yeah, I don't think they played too much Zeppelin. They might have played when we got to 71, they would occasionally play Stairway
Yeah.
or occasionally the Immigrant Song, something like that. But I don't think you heard too much of Zeppelin. I had some friends. In fact, I was in a couple of different bands and they introduced me to Blind Faith. They introduced me to Zeppelin. They introduced me to 10 Years After. So I got exposed to a lot of that type of music. But the top 40 station did play Osmonds. They played Beatles, of course, and many of the other acts. We're talking 1969 to 1977 or so, which is when I was listening to
Cool.
those stations.
Cool. Thanks. Now, folks, chime in and you're welcome to chime in, folks. I'll read your comments on any of these topics. And I know that, Mark, you have a list of, is it a list of like today's breakdown of different music segment genres that we might find on Billboard charts or in a record store, if there's such thing anymore? There's very few, but tell us about your list and then let's fire away and hear what you got to exemplify how music genres have really splintered, if you will, right, into so many subgenres, micro genres, macro genres, and off to the side genres.
Well, as I said in my proposal for the topic, I believe what Charlie Parker said many years ago. It's just music. It's playing clean and looking for the pretty notes. But many people have a need to stick music in a pigeonhole, and the holes have been getting smaller and more numerous over the years. Now, I like a wide range of music types from pop and rock to prog and classical, from jazz to some metal, from Latin to Japanese. And some genres are time period specific. For instance, if you look at classical music, you've got Gregorian chant, Gothic, medieval, Renaissance, Baroque, what's called classical, which is the period most people are familiar with, 1750s to 1820s, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, then Romantic, Wagner and Liszt, to the 20th century, or Stravinsky,
Right.
Modernist, which includes Impressionist, Expressionist, Neoclassical, and then postmodern contemporary. Those are all different time periods.
Yeah.
So I understand that. Now, some genres are also country specific, but we'll get into that a little bit within the specific genres. Let's take a look at rock to start with. You've got rock and roll, but rock and roll consists of music hall, which was largely British, then doo-wop, jump, rockabilly, skiffle, also heavily British.
Right.
Then you've got things like folk rock, pop rock, R&B or soul, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Soft rock, and within soft rock, you've now got yacht rock, which some people do not want to be in. Hello, Donald Fagen. And then within yacht rock, you've even got yacht country and yacht soul.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. And in fact, if you listen to Sirius XM satellite radio, you can pick up some of those, but not in the car. You have to have the app for that. Free advertising. Then back to rock, psychedelic or psych rock, beat or mercy beat, Freak beat, which is hard-edged British mod groups bridging R&B, beat, and early psychedelia.
Wow.
Punk, post-punk, garage rock, also 60s punk, space rock, indie rock, rock that climbs on, no, that's something else. Alternative rock, which is distinct from mainstream or commercial rock. And within alternative, you've got grunge, hybrid of punk and metal, Nirvana, the Seattle sound. Dream pop, which emphasizes atmosphere and sonic texture, as well as pop melody. Cocteau Twins, Mortal Coil, bands like that. Noise pop, Jesus and Mary Chain, for example.
Right.
Brit pop, 1990s movement with Oasis, Blur, Suede, Pulp.
Right.
Shoegaze, which is rooted in Phil Spector's Wall of Sound and 60s psychedelic pop, but I believe started in the 90s.
Interesting. Wow. If that's for me, I'm not here.
No, I get a lot of spam calls. Then
Yeah.
back to the main rock genres: kraut rock, glam rock, disco, pub rock, new wave, synth pop, prog rock. Now let's talk about prog.
Yeah.
And one of the most let's try that again. One of the most recent issues of Prog Magazine, which is a British publication, issue 167, February 2026. They named so many different genres. Listen to this.
Okay.
Progressive metal, a band called Hex, which I've never heard of, Hekz. Heavy prog, a band called Godsticks.
I just want to give a shout out to Haken as one of my very favorite.
That's next on the list. Prog rockers,
so good.
Haken or Haken.
Haken, yeah.
Prog, which I have several of their albums, but not the most recent ones. Prog fusion with jazz and Turkish influences like Tavanana, jazz fusion, Z Machine. These are all bands that were mentioned in the magazine. And jazz prog. Scottish prog, Comedy of Errors, Palace, Abel Gance. Prog metalers, Wolverine. Melodic prog, Yak. Genre-defying avant-garde metal work, Zoo and Ferrum Siderium.
Wow.
Synth proggers, Esoterica. Cosmic doom and psychedelic space rock, Spectral Sorcery, Hyperspace Odyssey. Atmospheric left-leaning prog metal, Sown. Modern gent and heavy progressive, Textures. That's a subgenre of progressive metal, which is defined by high gain, palm muted, distorted guitar chugging.
Wow.
Prog country, Shoot with the Yardbirds' Jim McCarty, 1973. Pop psych, covers of 1967 to 69 Nirvana style. Art proggers, Archive, Glass Minds. Symphonic rock and metal, Another Realm, Origin. Post rock, Blanket, True Blue. Left Field Folk Collective, Hen Ogled, Discombobulated. I've never heard of half these bands.
Yeah.
Neo Prog Collective, Solstice, Clan, The Stables Gathering. Post psychedelic freakout music, Hawkwind, the first album.
I've heard of that.
Folky psychedelic, Jane Weaver, The Fallen by Watchbird. And finally, prog pop, Trevor Horn. All of that in one issue of Prog Magazine.
That's incredible.
Now, you take another genre like reggae, and you think reggae.
Right.
But you've got within that calypso,
Right.
mento, which is Jamaican folk music, ska, rock steady, blue beat. Then you've got swamp pop, which includes Zydeco, Creole, and Cajun. Then you've got the African music genres, high life from Ghana and Nigeria, Afrobeat from Nigeria, Afro pop, Mbakanga and jive from South Africa, Mbube from South Africa, Fano from Lesotho, Songa Disco from South Africa. Then you've got Latin rock. Go ahead.
Can I ask, Mark, is Junkanoo listed there?
I don't have Junkanoo listed, but I certainly know of it.
Yeah, I got exposed to that in Florida when I lived there for a very short time, and I believe it comes from the Caribbean somewhere. So I think it's kind of tied to it's not reggae, but it's, I think, under or an offshoot, not from reggae, but it's sort of in that same umbrella. You'd find it at the same record store as a reggae. I think it's really interesting. It's really interesting. Banging on pieces of metal, trash can, whistles, dancing, singing, percussion instruments. It's really interesting. It's very festive. Yeah. Wow,
Yeah.
I never knew reggae had so many. Like I knew about calypso and a couple of the others you mentioned from Ghana, but this is just amazing.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put all the African music genres under reggae
Correct.
specifically,
Absolutely.
but and again, I'm not trying to damn anybody or criticize anybody
Right.
with these
Right.
genres, especially the ones that are country specific, like I just named.
Yeah.
Here's another example of that: Latin rock. You've
Yeah.
got Cuban Latin rock, which includes son clave, son cubano, Afro Cuban. Then
Right.
you've got Mexican, which includes mariachi, son jarocho, or jarocho probably,
Yeah.
ranchera, norteño, banda,
Yeah.
chicano,
Yeah.
and probably others, but those are the ones I was able to locate when putting this list together.
Yeah.
Even country, which we think of, if you remember the Blues Brothers movie, we got both types of music. We got country and Western. But
Yeah.
you've got hillbilly, honky tonk, bluegrass, Western swing, Nashville sound, modern country, alt country, country rap, and bro country, which I'd
Wow.
never heard of until I was doing research for this. Even metal, heavy metal, glam metal, Nawabum, new wave of British heavy metal, which I think people use the Nawabum pronunciation, do they not?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Thrash metal, death metal, black metal, groove metal, new metal, progressive metal, grindcore, and industrial. And I'm sure I've missed about 5 of them at least.
Yeah. That's interesting. Gosh.
And then you've got, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, I'm thinking of, and maybe you'll get to this, but I don't know if you will, because I don't know what genre this is. If Steve is watching, our producer, there's a band called the Chromatics, and I'd like to know what he thinks or knows their genre is. To me, it's like, I hate to mislabel something. It's kind of dark, romantic, and edges on ambient, but has amazing vocals. Like I don't know how to classify it, but he turned me on to them like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's just great. So I'm curious, Steve, if you're watching, chime in. Otherwise, I'll find out and put it in the comments. But it's interesting if you think about even just that. Like, okay, here's an artist, a band that I'm not familiar with. Like I know them inside and out, but I have heard and I listen to their music, but I don't know how to classify their genre. Like there's emo music out there, emo accordion clog. No, I made that up. Emo river dancing. But yeah, carry on. And we'll see if Steve chimes in with that one. I'm curious what it is.
Yeah. If you look at jazz, which I love, you can start with ragtime, move to boogie woogie, swing.
Yeah.
Then you've got bop, which includes bebop, hard bop, post bop, cool jazz and West Coast jazz, free jazz, fusion, Latin jazz, which includes mambo, bossa nova, samba, smooth jazz, and now these days contemporary or C jazz, which is the letter C and not SEA. And that could also include what was called for a while New Age.
Right.
Even blues, country blues, Delta blues, Memphis blues, urban blues, Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, British blues, soul blues. And finally, easy listening, which used to be known as beautiful music, also these days includes lounge, exotica, space age pop, and bachelor pad music.
What is that, I wonder? Bachelor pad music. I want to hear what that is.
There is a show now I have to think of the name, Cocktail Nation. It's a podcast which is broadcast or podcasted from Australia, and it includes all kinds of music, but a lot of times they'll play spy music. Spy movie music, and that tends to be where bachelor pad music comes from. You've got a lot of those spy themes, 60s and 70s spy themes.
Interesting. And just hearing the sound of some of the old ones from the mid 60s reminds me that there's a slight influence of a genre that we didn't come across just now, and that's surf. There's surf music.
Yeah. I should have caught that one.
Yeah. We did mention ska.
Yep.
The spy music. Wow. And what's the name of the podcast? Cocktail what?
Nation,
Nation. Cocktail Nation. Cocktail
hosted by a guy named Coop Cooper.
out of Australia. I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
check that out.
it's some neat
That
stuff.
sounds fun.
It used to be on Podbean, but I'm not sure who's hosting it these days. I
I
think
love
it's somebody else.
Yeah, I love music of that era, the early to mid 60s spy movies. When I think of Bullet with Steve McQueen and that
Perfect
weird
choice. Lalo
offbeat,
Schifrin's score.
yeah, that weird offbeat drum beat that just plays by itself. It's so unsettling. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? It's really just this weird like glitch in the pattern. Now I got to listen to this guy's podcast. So interesting. So, Mark, I got to ask, out of all that music, what's the one genre you could one, if you had to pick one, even if it's equal with others, what's the one genre you could never get tired of?
I would probably have to say pop.
Okay. Which is pretty wide spectrum on its own, as you
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I particularly like a lot of the British pop, such as a group called Swing Out Sister, one of my
Oh,
absolute favorites of all time. They
cool.
started in 1986 with the hit Breakout. That's the one everybody knows. They think it's a one-hit wonder, but they've had either 10 or 12 albums since that time, over that period of time. And they pay homage to the 60s music and the 70s music, and they've tended to go back and forth between those two on different albums.
So where would you place
And by the way, I forgot to mention rap and hip hop and all
Oh,
this.
wow, yeah. My wife was there when all that was born out of New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are definitely subgenres under those.
Yeah.
And even with one artist, if I were to say, because I almost asked you the question, where would you put blank, and I'll get to them, blank artist? But then I thought, well, that artist has a lot of diversity. It's not all one genre. So I'll throw the name out there. Where would you put Prince? If you encapsulated everything into one thing that he did, like where would he end up there? Is it pop or is it?
I would put it under soul.
Okay.
I would definitely put it under soul. Soul is a term which originally it was R&B, then in the 60s it was soul, and then they moved back to R&B, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know if it was a cultural thing that they wanted to get away from the connotations of Motown or whether it was some other reason. But to me, rhythm and blues puts it in a pigeonhole which is too much of the 50s. And I like the idea that soul is much broader than that.
Yeah.
And that's why I would put Prince in the soul category, because that man had a lot of soul.
Yeah, that makes sense. The issue I have, and then I'm going to ask about another artist the same way, but the issue I have with R&B is that R&B today is not rhythm and blues. R&B could be like John Legend. That's not R&B to me. To me, that's, no offense to him, but to me, that's like easy listening. Like to me, R&B goes back to the early days. You know, Withers on guitar and just the early to late 60s, you know, where I think R&B has almost been so, I hate to use the term, commercialized and made so much more accessible that it has become very beige. You know, it's just, I don't know. Does that make any sense? There's so, it's so indistinctive now compared to back then.
Well, I'd say that's the case with a lot of modern music, unfortunately.
True.
That it's designed for purely commercial purposes. And while the music of the 60s, 70s, and later was intended to be commercial, most of it came from artists who just wanted to make music.
Yeah.
And today you've got a lot of artists who just want to make money.
Right. Where would
Unfortunately, that's where the business has gone.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Where would you put Frankie Valli and or the Everly Brothers?
Oh, well, Everly Brothers tends to cross a little bit into the folk rock category, but I would say Frankie Valli is pure pop.
Okay.
And Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, pure pop.
who is out now and when I say now, who has come out in the last 10 to 15 years that would be pure pop? Would that be like Justin Bieber, Bruno Mars, or am I way off?
Um, I'm not sure there is that much pure pop now,
Okay, that's
because what you have is artists who are going for a very specific demographic or a very specific sound that is commercial at that time. For example, with female vocals, you've got a lot of artists with this breathy, soft Billie Eilish style vocal that's happening. And that's been a building for a while, but it seems to be quite popular these days.
unlike my favorite, most amazing female vocalist, other than my wife's singing. Olita Adams is just amazing. She has an incredible range, and I discovered her by accident thanks to Tears for Fears, discovering her and putting her on the Sowing the Seeds of Love album. And her work on Bad Man's song is just unbelievable. And she plays piano, and she writes all her own music and plays piano and keyboards on her solo album. She's just a tremendous artist. And I remember seeing her years and years and years ago when I think her first solo album came out, I think. And she was on the Jay Leno show, and she's this little tiny thing, and her voice is just incredible. I've got such a music crush on her. She's so good, just so good. But you're right, the more breathy, sort of silky and provocative almost type of tone and tender of the vocals of women is really in right now. Unlike Olita or Ann Wilson of Heart, Ann and Nancy, it was all that was rock, that was a whole did. And then we got, of course, Janis Joplin. Oh, there'll never be another female voice like her, I don't think.
No.
Just amazing
And
stuff.
she, of course, was following in the Bessie Smith model.
Yeah. Very interesting topics.
Yeah. So radio and the lack of radio these days, I think, has a lot to do with the fragmentation of the genres and the fact that you used to have record stores which had sections such as rock, pop, easy listening, soundtrack, classical, jazz, maybe a blues section. And that was about it back then in the 60s, 70s, and even the early 80s.
Yeah.
And then you started to get this fragmentation. Probably when punk came in is when it really started.
Yeah,
so that would have been the late 70s.
Yeah, thinking about what you just said, in the mid 70s, anything that was prog wasn't in its own section. It was, you'd find Yes or King Crimson in the rock section. That was all one thing. If it had the word rock in the genre, progressive rock, rock and roll, that was all in one thing, which is interesting because I remember going to the record store and getting those albums, and there was no prog section. And folks, if you're just joining us or you missed any of this, Mark, how many genres did you name off? Maybe 50, 70?
No, I didn't even try to count them.
Yeah, go folks, rewind, check this out on the archive because there's an incredible amount of genres, and I'd really be curious to learn from the comments what your favorite music genre is and see how many pop up that are not like mainstream genres, like the top 7 that we know of, jazz, rock, prog, metal, and there's like 3 others, R&B, etc. Country. To me, country, that might be one of the genres. I'd love your feedback, Mark. That might be one of the genres that has morphed the most. When I think of country, I think of Gene Autry and Johnny Cash and Glenn Campbell and Roy Clark. Now, to me, country it's pop rock with a twang and a slide guitar and the lyrical content, right?
Yeah, you named the bands that I would put largely in the original C&W, country and western category.
Yeah, absolutely.
That morphed into the Nashville sound in the 60s and 70s, where you had producers like Owen Bradley working on material and making a lot of artists famous. Yeah. That morphed into modern country, where the pop sound started to really come into it. You could say almost that Tanya Tucker might have been the start of that. I don't know
Oh,
exactly,
interesting. Yeah.
but it certainly grew. And then, of course, you've got Shania Twain, which was huge. And now you've got Taylor Swift, who started as country, but I don't think she's country anymore.
Right.
But I don't listen to a lot of Taylor Swift. I admire her. I like what she does, but I just don't particularly listen to that material.
Yeah.
And now, of course, you've got this alt country, country rap, bro country, whatever, and it's different. So radio was another big factor. You start, as I said before, you have the record stores, but then you have radio, which tended to be taught. Let's forget about classical and easy listening for a minute, and even jazz. Although there were jazz radio stations, now there are very few.
There's actually one that I listen to. The station that carries NPR out of Phoenix is jazz, which is cool.
Oh, that's wonderful. I wish we still had some of that in North Texas.
Yeah, and they play some really old stuff sometimes, like Coltrane and really old stuff. It's really great to listen to. Interesting. And you mentioned, and we're going to go in a moment, but you mentioned it was funny that they simulcasted the AM and FM, that station back then, and the FM went off at sunset, because even still AM radio has issues with transmitting at night. It gets all fuzzy and staticky. So I'm guessing that's probably why AM often signed off at that time, right? Because at night there's different atmospheric things happening and whatnot.
Yeah. The station I worked at in 1978 and 79, which was in Garden City, Kansas, was a 5,000 watt AM, and it would probably have interfered with other stations at night.
Oh,
because we were in an area, this was Southwest Kansas. So you had Southwest Kansas, you had part of Colorado, part of Oklahoma below, and there's one other Nebraska to the north. So you had that area with 4 states, including Kansas. Right. So I think that's why at that time the license was only at night. Don't really know what it is today. And then, of course, you had the fidelity issue.
Yeah.
So and AM in the late 80s turned almost entirely to talk.
Yeah.
So you don't get much music on AM radio anymore. Although you do get a lot of Mexican stations that are still broadcasting music. Banda and salsa and
especially where we are, both of us in border states, me in Arizona, you in Texas. Yeah, we do get a lot of that on AM and FM. Yeah. Very interesting.
So the radio station, just to finish up, the radio stations started to tailor their formats to specific groups that they wanted to reach. And that fragmentation carried forward, I think, into the entire music industry, because what fed the radio stations? The music industry. Yeah. So the music industry started fragmenting what they were doing. And then other people said, well, my music isn't like this, it's like that. And they wanted to distinguish themselves. So they came up with all these crazy names for things.
Yeah. Crazy. I'd love to get that list from you. That would really be cool. And folks, again, if you didn't see the whole thing, go back, rewind, give us your feedback. And Mark, thanks so much for joining me, and congratulations again on winning the top of our 3-round game show a little while back. Folks, if you don't know what we do, in fact, I'm going to show you. In fact, tell you what, I'll show a video first, then I'll explain really quickly how it works. So this is happening tonight. Check this out.
Rough day at work?
Take a break and join our next live stream music trivia game show. Favorite live albums of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And boy, there are great ones.
Come play for a chance to win prizes.
Prizes provided by Medley Merch. Lots of great stuff, and we've added a bunch of new prizes to the prize boards for you to choose from as well.
Even a chance to win a guest VJ spot on Drum Talk TV. We've seen people win by guessing.
April 22nd, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, we have yet another music trivia game show.
All are welcome. Show up, turn it up, and play for a chance to win.
There you go. Like I don't hear my wife's voice enough, right? Anyway, so join us for that, folks. Mark, if you're available, we'd love to see you there. And folks, thanks for following what we do here on Drum Talk TV. You can check out our channels, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, of course. And check out our websites. We have two. The mothership is www.drumtalktv.com, where all our interviews and event coverage and documentaries and fun stuff is that we've done for 13 years now. And our membership site, which is drumtalktvbrilliance.com, and there is a free level membership. We've got some great stuff happening there. We'd love for you to be part of it. And join us for the game show tonight. It's free. It costs as much as nothing. That's how much it is. Oh, people are already calling. Send them the voicemail. So thanks, everybody. Mark, hang on the line with me for a moment after we say goodbye. And folks, thanks again. Bye. We'll see you soon. Real